Do you hear me okay? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Look, listen, you say, you might say, I know I am an immortal spirit, or I am tired of this mad world, and peace is all I want. Until the phone rings. Bad news. The stock market has collapsed. The deal may fall through. The car has been stolen. Your mother-in-law has arrived. The trip is canceled. They demand more money. They say it's your fault. Suddenly, there's a surge of anger, of anxiety. A harshness comes into your voice. I can't take any more of this. You accuse and blame, attack, defend, or justify yourself. And it's all happening on autopilot. Something is obviously much more important to you now than the inner peace that a moment ago you said was all you wanted. And you are not an immortal spirit anymore either. The deal, the money, the contract are more important. To whom? And that's why I really like, to whom is more important? To the immortal spirit that you said that you said you are the immortal spirit. No, to me, the small me that seeks securities of fulfillments in things that are transient and gets anxious or angry because it fails to find it. If peace is really what you want, then you will choose peace. If peace matters to you more than anything else, and if you truly knew yourself to be spirit rather than a little me, you would remain non-reactive and absolutely alert. But I started laughing out loud because I find it so funny. Like, all I want is peace. What? But to me,
the phone rings.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. It's so important. It's easy to be peaceful when things are peaceful. And it's more challenging when circumstances pop up out of your control.
Yeah, so I mean, the summaries of the chapter, he ends telling that how you handle the challenges in your life really shows you who you really are, or who do you think you are, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, I found it really, really nice to share it with you.
I love that. That's awesome. That's such a good quote that captures that experience really well. I think we can all relate to that for sure.
No, definitely. And also, I want to be like really open and honest with you. Like minutes before our interview, even I was thinking, will I say something stupid? Will I look smart? Will I say something? Wonder if the questions are very different. You know, I'm joking, right? But I mean,
of course.
I like to be like really natural.
Yeah.
Regarding, because I really, as I told you before, I honor your space because, as I told you, I think it's like the backstage of Instagram, you know, like what is fakely happy. No, here we speak like the day to day. And also it's in a very lovable way. It's not like you have because otherwise it will be also like kind of a hater thing, you know, like, oh, you posers, we are the deep guys. And no. I mean, so that's why I really like the space that you're offering, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. And with what we post, like I always tell people, you never have to worry about what you say or if the audio cuts out or how it looks, because I'll find a cool minute clip or 2-minute clip and then I'll send it to you. And if you think it's cool, then we can use that, or we can pick a different topic that's interesting and take that 2-minute clip. And so it's totally flexible, and it's just easier to have.
I know, but I just wanted, like, even this, I mean, please share everything, because really I think your space is a safe space.
It's that's a good point. Yeah, just to have the full natural conversation. I think that totally has value too.
Yes, definitely.
That's awesome. Well, let's see what questions we can get through. We might not be able to get through all of them, but we can kind of go through our favorite subjects. So let's start with your work. Maybe just like describe, do you have an approach you take to getting to know your clients and how you help them?
Yes, definitely. You know, actually, when somebody contacts us at our mental health institution, we like to at first on the phone receive and listen what the person is needing, because maybe you schedule an interview and that person has taken a lot of effort to assist to this interview, and suddenly in the interview they figure out that there was no point in scheduling an interview because maybe they're looking for something that we don't provide or we cannot help them, you know. Right. So we have a first on the phone like a 15-minute conversation to really find out what can we do. For example, sometimes, you know, a mother can call us seeking immediate help because his son of 16 years old is having a schizophrenic maybe episode, and maybe we are not available, or we don't have that kind of structure to hold that situation. So
Right.
we can quickly and immediately, like refer this to some institution that can grab a hold on the person. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why we like to speak on the phone first. And also, I think it's very well nurturing for people when you listen to people, and not just a machine like a Google form like, okay, time, date, gender,
Right.
So personally, I like to do that because also on the phone, I think you get a lot of information of how is how is the how is the person that is needing your help. As I always say, this is funny. I have a friend who is a tennis professor, right? And I saw him the other day, and I tell him, I mean, I really celebrate you are very happy. And he says,
Mm-hmm.
well, I like my job, and also my job, people come to my job happy, because they say, oh, I have this tennis lesson. So regarding psychology, often people approach us, like in a state of stress, of anxiety or worries. So we have to be like very careful. We are dealing with people who are vulnerable. So a slight word, might be like have a different impact. So first, I like to get to know the person on the phone, and afterwards schedule an interview. And also in the interview, if the patient or the client is a minor, we like to have the interview with the mother, the father, or the adults that are in charge of the kid, because they might have different kind of information. So I really like, when we are discussing how the gender roles also affecting the interviews. For example, in Argentina, I'm saying in Argentina because maybe in the world it's different. I have done my private practice mostly in Argentina, and I would say like 7 out of 10 interviews are always requested by the mother of the kid, and often we have to make an effort, like to get the father to come. For example, if it's a married couple with a female and a male. And I shared with you with this before in one interview. So we said, okay, how can I help you? And the mother started speaking, okay, our son is having a difficult time at school. And suddenly her husband looked at her and said, I thought we were here because he's wetting his bed. Like totally different points of view, So right on the face. So I'm not changing a bit the scenario. This was real. So it really shapes how can we help the person. And also personally, I don't like to, I don't know the word in English, like over diagnose.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a kid needs just to play soccer, and the parents maybe need some more like, guidance. So sometimes I don't really like, for example, if somebody said, I don't know, I'm kidding, my son doesn't know how to stand up for himself, when somebody is harassing him. Well, maybe that kid needs to go to karate, not to the psychologist. I mean, like more humorous way. But also, I don't really like, to overflow the person with what they're experiencing.
Right.
So that would be the approach first. I don't know if I've answered the question properly.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
do you think it's important to bring in the people around the patient? Is that typically how you approach it?
Yes, absolutely. When we are working with teenagers, actually, I love. There's an exercise. Then you ask the patient if he can bring to the next session just a piece of paper of his brother writing, okay, how I see my brother now, and they put it in an envelope. His girlfriend or his boyfriend, how does my partner see me now?
Mm-hmm.
And then in session we read how his surroundings or his people see the patient. And also many times, for example, I like to have the patient the decision to bring, for example, his mother, his father, his girlfriend. And also sometimes I might be interviewing in a private session his father, his girlfriend, because you get a lot of information. there's a psychologist in Argentina used to mention a very classic case on emotional dependency, where his patient claimed that his wife was very absent, that she was never around, and then when he interviewed her, she said like, I'm always for him. Just on Thursday, I go to, I don't know, playing tennis with my friends. So he can clearly see that his patient was, he had a different outlook. When we work with a patient, we work with the world also of his patient. Sometimes I had done like sessions at the house of the patient. And for me, it's so much information. Like, he might speak always of the brother who passed away. And when you go into his house, because you have to do a session specifically in his house, you see a photograph of his brother, and inside it hits you very differently. I mean, at least I'm talking about my experience.
Right.
So definitely, yeah. And also in this book of Eckhart Tolle, sometimes in relationship, he said that it's not a couple like, okay, me and you. It's me, my self-image, that would be my ego, and you and your self-image. So suddenly it's like a four self-images relationship, And regarding families also, sometimes the roles we play, like a parent, a dad, does he know how when his son is like 21 years old, like let go of his role of a father and let the soul or the essence of his son shine, and like maybe giving space.
Right.
So sometimes the roles are very, very complex. I remember I worked with a family therapist that she said, when dad makes a mistake, it's not mom who gets mad at dad for the mistake on mishandling his children. It's the wife. Like she used to laugh with this and said like, you got the mother, the father, who also are the husband and the wife. So okay, you as a father, like I don't know what's the word, like when you make a mistake, okay, the wife will hold account of the mistake of the husband as a dad. So I think it's very interesting to have this kind of roles. And regarding like neurolinguistics, sometimes people say we don't live in the world, we live in our own mental world, right? So I definitely, for me, I love to bring the world of the patient in session. And also I noticed the patients usually like to bring a little bit of their world, so I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. And so what are, I know it's hard to speak generally about therapy because everyone's so different, but what are some of the common problems you see young men coming to you with, and what are some of the common solutions or exercises that could be helpful?
Yes, definitely. With young men, usually what we usually witness is different forms of anxiety, performance anxiety, social pressures, social anxiety also, and regarding the solutions, for example, when the person is like around 16, 17, 18, there's a lot of pressures and expectations of you have to do something great in your life, so everyone will recognize you. So that kind of solutions that we like to help the patient is to facilitate and like this conversation, a safe emotional space where the patient can be vulnerable, and the changes that the person will experience in the conversation with the therapist, he probably will go with the patient when he interacts after in the world. I had a professor that he said, psychotherapy is not 1 hour a day. Psychotherapy is 24 hours a day. Like, that you're always with yourself. And I believe so. So the solutions mainly are, there's a lot of journaling, because we think different when we speak than when we write. Even in movies, I remember Harrison Ford used to complain to George Lucas because he read the script and he didn't feel the flow of words. So, and he said to George Lucas, do you speak what you type, or you just type it? No, I just type it. Well, please, while you type it, speak it, because it's different. You know, he used to complain. And regarding journalism, I'm sorry, journaling, it's very good because we think different. Also, I think there's a very misplaced conception of, okay, I go to therapy to talk, to speak. And sometimes you have to write, you know, like flush the toilet, maybe the mind also, you know, you can flush the words, and it's very, very good. I mean, so that kind of exercise is very good, depending obviously on what is the scenario, because the most important thing is with teenagers or young men is to find their inner voice and give more volume, right, to their voice, because I believe sometimes they are like listening much more of what society expects, of what their parents expect, what their friends expect. So it's very difficult, you know, sometimes to for them to hear themselves. That's why most of kids, you know, of teenagers, like at 17, 18, like take these long trips, you know, like mute everybody and the whole world, like small, downsize it and see on a plane or on a train leaving behind, so they can like a physical distance to know each other, to know themselves better, like how they handle conversations, how they handle problems without their habitual surroundings, you know. But definitely, I think it's a very good point, because also biologically, the brain is very different at the 14, 15, 17. You know, the frontal lobe prioritize much more experiences rather than, you know, like concepts. So that's why also teenagers are very short-term minded, you know, like when we are working with kids, like kids, I mean like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you say to a kid, you want, I don't know, chocolate now or 30 chocolates at the end of the month? No, I want the chocolate now. So translate it to, I don't know, school. Okay, if you get a very good qualification, you can go out on Friday night. And usually we do this guidance to parents, like if they say to their kids, you know, like, if you get a good grade, you will be a very good person with a very nice house. So the kids, they won't relate to that. Do you follow me? Or do you
Yeah, it's too far away.
Sense?
Yeah, it's too far away for them to grasp. And so you
Yes.
put smaller goals in front of them that they can reach faster.
Yes, and also, for example, you know, when you guide the father, the mother to be loving with them when they make something good, it's always suggested that it must be immediately. It won't make very much sense. Like 7 days later, oh son, you know, remember 7 days ago you got a very good grade. That was wonderful. Also, they won't relate to that. On the other hand, if it's more immediately, that kind of behavior would be much more rewarded and more likely to repeat itself, for example.
Yeah, and I could see how that could be useful with lowering some of the pressures young men feel, because I think at a crossroads at 16 or 17 or 18, there's lots of big things in the future. Like you want to get into university and you're worried about a job or a sports team. There's lots of big goals that you have that feels like a lot of pressure. And so I could see how it could be useful and more gratifying to break it down into smaller goals to reach them.
You know, I was listening to you, and I agree totally with you. Also, I mean, lowering, because, for example, you know, I remember there was this, I believe it's called, the guy calls himself Mystery. He gives like this kind of seminars on how to get to know people or pick up dates, you know. And he always said something very funny: when you approach to somebody at the bar, don't think this will be the love of my life, because you will be very more actions, you know. So like think, okay, I want to have a good time. And also, I don't know if you heard this one, I think it's very good, Henry. I remember Hugh Jackman speaking of the 85% rule. I don't know if you heard this one.
No, I don't know it.
He said, I think it's fantastic, and I totally agree. If you say to somebody, you have to run this race, like, 100 meters at 100%. Now, okay, he will do so. But he stated that if you say to somebody, run this 100-meter race at your 85%, probably this person will run much more better than if you said 100%, because they will be like a little bit more relaxed. So therefore, they will perform better. So
yeah.
I think it's a fantastic way to put it. What you mentioned regarding lowering and being more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
I always say I like to read, share the things I've written and learned. I think it's a very popular Tony Robbins quote where he said, people overestimate what they can do in a year, and people underestimate what they can do in 5 years. So that's why, like, a lot of young men and women, like, okay, by the end of the year I will be super rich, super famous, so I will make a company. And so suddenly, if their startup isn't working, they feel like very, very much frustrated, depressed, and they let it go. So sometimes it's because we might be overestimating what we can do in a year. I mean, it's wonderful to be ambitious, but if that ambition turns to hold the other side of the coin, that it's a lot of frustration, that's not very good for your mental health anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's important to break things down into achievable goals, both for actually achieving them and lowering the pressure. And I like the Hugh Jackman quote, because I think it helps with actual performance as well. If you're super anxious and under tons of pressure, I don't think you perform as well. And so that 85% rule, just kind of tricking your brain into thinking this isn't life or death. You will be okay, failure or not. And I can see that being very helpful just in your actual performance as well.
Yes, when I saw that, I thought it was very, very good, kind of tricky, as you said, right? A little bit tricky. Mm-hmm. And because it provides you, I think, the person, like, with a safety net that allows the person to forget the safety net. It's very kind of tricky. I agree with you, definitely.
And I just thought of something. So when you have a patient dealing with these kind of pressures or anxieties, do you try and help through the parents as well? Do you teach the parents to say certain things or do certain things that may help, or do you really just focus with the patient?
No, that's a very good question, Henry. Always regarding my team and psychotherapy on this field, it makes a very big deal. There's a very big difference if the patient lives with his parents or if he doesn't live with his parents. If he lives with his parents, it's definitely a must to have periodical, systematic interviews with the system, because otherwise, all the work you've done might, I don't know, I won't say go to the toilet, but it could be diluted in the system. If for example, I have a lot of, for example, of 15-year-old kids that they study a lot, they get a good grade, but at home nobody says, like, I know that you did very good, you effort yourself. So they come to me and they say, I don't know if I want to keep on doing this kind of effort because nobody gets to know it. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make sense. So you have to work very much in a tight way with his mother or his father in order to like, it's very much more efficient to work with the parents, definitely. So I would say, so yes, much more if the patient lives with his father or his mother.
Right.
Sometimes, each human being is more or less emotional. Some people are very emotional, so they can pick up very quickly how they're feeling or how the environment of the others are feeling. And sometimes people who are less emotional can be, without knowing, they can be more invalidating how the person feels in that way. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And there, I think there's an interesting concept there with parenting. And I've seen this pattern before. Sometimes parents will uh, withhold praise for like a later reward, or they don't want the kid to stop working hard, so that they will oh, it'll always be just not quite good enough, which I think can be
yes.
stressful. And I've seen it like be challenging for a young person to get their parents' approval, because they're kind of withholding it to make sure their kid keeps working hard. But I think it's very counterintuitive, and it's pretty harmful.
Definitely, I agree. I totally agree with you. In that kind of cases, we in Argentina we call it, for example, people who have anorexia, anorexic or
Yeah,
bulimic.
eating disorder. Yeah,
Yes, for example, usually it is very attached to like this kind of overachiever thing, and
right.
like the family, the family of the patient. Sometimes specialists in my field, they call the family like this photographic family, like, okay, we're all perfect, take a photo. So
Yep.
that kind of family photo is usually in Spanish they say photogenic families, where
Mm-hmm.
like this kind of clan thing. So that really hits up. I work with many people who have like 18 years old, and sometimes the performance anxiety, for example, they take Viagra, because they think, oh, okay, I have to like look really good if I have a sex with this partner. So and sometimes even the pressure is so strong that they even like avoid having the scenario of going out and getting to know somebody, because
Mm-hmm.
the fear of failing is so strong. So that's why, like, to avoid, or it's always like the worst scenario. In Argentina, there's a lot of well-respected. I don't know the word in English is sexologists, people who are
Yeah.
yes, okay, and they always say like the myths of masculinity, like all men always have to have an erection, or always they want to have sex. So suddenly, if the person, if you as a man don't have an erection, or you are not feeling like too much in this moment to sex, you have to be like very well, you know, um, known in these areas. Because, for example, if a kid of 14 years old, some girls come, I mean, I say, okay, do you want to have sex with her? And he's like scared. So he paralyzes, he freaks out, he freezes, and he says, I don't know, no. You know, for example, that can be very damaged for him. He might think that this has happened many times. So I really like to be very open with this, to share like this kind of information, so kids or teenagers can say, that's okay. I work with a patient that a scenario similar happened, like some group of friends or girlfriends of his friends suggested, like and he was like in a very brave way, he said to this girl, I'm not feeling this. I hope you understand me. Please don't. I don't want to hurt your feelings. It's just that I don't like to feel pressure. I would feel much more comfortable and I was very beautifully eloquent, and also the other person totally understood. And I think that's a very excellent way of handling the situations, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of boundaries also that you can teach to kids, when they have this experience, like, I don't like this, I don't feel comfortable, can we try another thing, can we and that kind of information, I mean, I think that there could be much more done, in schools, to provide
Mm-hmm.
this kind of information,
Yeah.
because this even happens, in adults. If a man feels pressure that he has to have sex, he has to have an erection, and even his partner or might buy onto this kind of myth. Oh, you're not excited, you're not aroused. It's because I am not so good looking now, and right. So you have to be like very at peace and very self-assured also to understand that, you know, like sometimes sex is great, sometimes sex is not great, and sometimes you're tired, sometimes you're stressed. So that kind of information, I would love to be much more available regarding that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. That's one of the first things you brought up, and I think it's so important to discuss. It is so closely tied to masculinity, like sexual prowess and performance, and it's a ton of pressure. And I think society does kind of portray it as a 100% always on, always ready to go, which is kind of just mechanical. And it's like you said, it's very human, it's very balanced. You can be tired or stressed or worried or pressured, just like anything else in life. And so just bringing down some of those super high pressures, very helpful. And so, but no one talks about it, and it's very taboo and it's very stigmatized to discuss those kinds of things.
Definitely, you know, because definitely, I agree with you 100%. So, because regarding, for example, dysfunction with erection, like, you know, everybody says this thing of like, no, I've never experienced that. I don't know what you're talking. Like, come on, please. So that's, I like to be like very humorous, but not humorous in a not respected way. But in order that I like to provide some flexibility regarding that kind of issues. And regarding how to, you asked me like on masculinity or good man. I wanted to read. If can I share with you what I've
Please,
read?
yeah.
Oh, yes. So okay, this is a very brief excerpt of the memoirs, the autobiography of Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was a young bodybuilder. He just arrived to the States. So he has a very big competition. He won in Europe 6 months before. He comes to the States and he loses. Terrible loss, right? So I will read the following. That night, despair came crashing in. My cheerfulness almost never deserts me, but it did then. I was in a foreign country, away from my family, away from my friends, surrounded by strange people in a place where I didn't speak the language. How had I even made it this far? I was way out of my depth. All of my belongings were in one little gym bag. I had left behind everything else. My job was probably gone. I had no money. I didn't know how we'd get home. Worst of all, I had lost, right? So he's in a hotel and he says, I embarrassed myself and I failed to perform. I failed to perform on this competition. I failed to perform. I was sharing the room with Roy Callender, a black bodybuilder based in England who had also been in the London competition, the one Arnold won. He was very sweet, talking to me about my loss. He was much more mature than I was and was talking about things I didn't know quite understand. He was talking about feelings. Yeah, it's hard to lose after such a big victory in London, he said. But remember that next year you will win again and everyone will forget about this loss. This was the first time that a man had ever been that nurturing with me. I knew that women were nurturing. My mother was nurturing. Other women were nurturing. But to get real empathy from a guy was overwhelming. Up until then, I thought that only girls cry. But I ended up crying quietly in the dark for hours. It was a great relief. When I woke up the next morning, I felt much better. Sunlight was pouring into the room and the phone next to the bed was ringing. Well, I think, I don't know what was your reaction, but that really touched me when I read that. What did you think?
Yeah, it's so sweet. And it's
right?
it's really nice because I think it's someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's the big, strong guy with the machine gun. He's the person who's able to do this because he's so strong and so confident and sure of himself. And for him to explain this scene where he's receiving empathy from a male friend is so awesome. And it is super powerful to get that kind of empathy.
And regarding, you know, like lowering standards, I don't know even if I read it on probably one of your posts, or I should associate it with, you know, I don't know if you heard this one, that someone tweeted to him and he said, Arnold, if you like are hard on myself and tell me to go to the gym, I will go right away because I've been depressed in the pandemic. And the obvious thing was, for him to say, go to the gym. And he said, I'm not going to be hard on you, man. You have been dealing with a lot of depression. So sometimes, no, like, don't go to the gym. Try to do a push-up on your room, And the guy went to the gym, but I think it was so beautiful because everyone expected like to say, okay, go to the gym, And he said, I'm not going to be that hard on you. So I think it's a wonderful example of what you said before of handling things differently, I won't even say like lowering standards, like handling things or looking at things differently, right?
Yeah. No, there's some really cool themes in there, like having close male friends who you can be vulnerable with. That scene kind of shows the power of that. It's so important to have that part of your life. It's just a really powerful influence, and I think typically kind of rare because there's sometimes insecurities or competition can get in the way of healthy male friendships where you're able to be that kind of supportive.
Yes, a group of peers definitely helps a lot. In Argentina, we say like mental health and also social health, right? I mean, if you're surrounded, as you said, by a group of peers who can be understanding, respect of what you're dealing with, definitely, well, it gets a long way. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and then the other thing I was going to say on the Schwarzenegger scene was I've seen more recently the kind of most traditionally masculine and strong guys in pop culture today, like Schwarzenegger or Terry Crews or The Rock. They've done really good work in like being vulnerable and explaining the importance and the significance of emotions, and it just shows that comes from a place of confidence. The stronger you are, the more confident you are. It gives you the ability to be vulnerable, and it's usually the weak or insecure people that just kind of put the hard face on and aren't able to be vulnerable. So it's really cool to see the guys at the top kind of teaching the people around them to be how to be vulnerable.
Definitely, and also regarding, like as you said before, like the physical experience of somebody witnessing something like that. Because if I say it, maybe someone said, okay, what are you doing, skinny guy, talking about but this powerful gigantic guy saying I was scared, I was crying. Wow, it hits you very differently, right? I mean, so I really love to see Terry Crews when he says this kind of testimony. I think it's great, and they do so much good. I mean, regarding this kind of bringing down this myths or walls that keep a lot of people trapped. So I really cherish that and celebrate it and honor it. Yes, definitely.
I mean, it's such a great the thing that you shared that with us. It's a great example of healthy masculinity and how powerful healthy masculinity can be for someone who's kind of down on their luck or gone through a loss or a failure. Having that kind of perspective is really helpful for getting out from that rock bottom.
No, totally. So I'm gonna look at these Terry Crews interviews after a while. You spark it
really he has some great discussions. And I guess so. One last question on masculinity. How do you see the gender roles play out in your work? Basically, do you see is it difficult for young men to ask for help? I know you mentioned that a lot of times the mom is the one reaching out for help. Is that what you've seen in your experience, that it's hard for men to ask for help? And how do you I don't know, how do you get to a position where you can kind of teach a guy to be comfortable asking for help?
Definitely, that's a fantastic question. Yes, regarding the statistic, yes, as I said before, 7 out of 10 times the mother calls, and it's very unusual for a 14-year-old kid to like say, Mom, Dad, I want to go therapy. It's very unusual. I would say it's the less the times I would experience that. So when the kid agrees, like, okay, come to psychotherapy, and then I will buy you an ice cream. So that you have to like really take that shot and quickly build a scenario where the person can feel vulnerable and okay and not like guarded. So even physically, it's very different when you're working with kids like 5 years old. I know it's different. If you are standing, that if you go on the floor and you speak on the same level, there's a different ambience you have to build really quickly, because maybe you get that only shot, and it's a very big effort. You know, that kid would much rather be like, I saw a T-shirt, fantastic. I said, I post my video game to be here. You know, so definitely I can relate to that. So yes, I always like don't like to as the 85% rule. I don't like I don't try to the patient feel like he's in a session with a psychologist because he has a problem, rather than he has a moment for himself. He can like put everything out there and have a moment for himself, and rather if he wants to speak very slow or don't speak at all. So I try much to build that atmosphere so the person can really leave the session in a different way the person arrived at the session.